Day 2 of the Elizabeth Wettlaufer inquiry gets underway in St. Thomas, Ontario in just about 2.5 hours. On the opening day, the inquiry heard Wettlaufer was fired twice, once in 1995 and again in 2014 for making medication errors. After she was let go in 2014, she was given a $2,000 settlement and a good reference letter, part of a deal reached with her former employer. Joining us now is health lawyer Lisa Feldstein. Lisa, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk about this settlement. It was supported by the Union of Ontario Nurses Association. How was this even allowed to happen?
So, I mean, that is the role of unions, and we have to keep in mind that this is an anomaly, and many employees' jobs are on the line, and the unions are there to advocate for them. And sometimes it's easier to make a payment or do a reference letter and not potentially face a lawsuit from an employee.
I mean, I was trying to put it into context in my own life, and I've always heard stories about friends with home care workers or nannies or housekeepers, and they have a terrible experience with that person. They feel that the best way to get rid of them is just to write a positive letter and send, so they're somebody else's problem.
And sometimes it is.
Is that sort of what we're talking about right here?
I mean, I wasn't involved in that case, but it certainly could have been, because if somebody moves on and finds another job, they're not often looking to you for money,
right.
and they can move on, so that maybe have been a factor.
Let's talk about the point of this inquiry. It's to figure out how this woman was able to get away with so much damage, so many murders for over an extended period of time. And a lot of people are wondering if going through the motions of this and writing and reading off a report is going to change anything. What sort of impact can this report potentially have?
I think the potential is huge, and it will depend on a few factors, though, and one will be how actionable are the recommendations. If they are high level and abstract and hard to actually implement, it may just collect dust on a shelf. If they are action-oriented and give some direction, sort of prescriptive in nature, targeting specific organizations, because this isn't about one person's fault or error. This is obviously systemic, involving multiple organizations. So if those are concrete recommendations that can be implemented, this policy needs to be in place or amended, then I think it has potential for change. And I think maybe in other jurisdictions as well, presumably they will be taking note of this.
But Lisa, let's look at the specific crimes in this case. They are so horrific and they are so specific to this one person. But if we go to this map that we have of long-term care, there's incidences of abuse, as you can see, across the country that they probably don't rise to the level of murder, but there is real abuse going on across the country. What action does the government need to take to ensure that any type of abuse, not just this most extreme form of abuse, is dealt with?
So I think there's a few different things, and actually those numbers may very well be low because many people don't get caught or don't make reports for fear of reprisal. One thing many of my clients are family caregivers, and they come to me facing problems in long-term care, and many of them have complained that they make reports to the Ministry of Health and they feel the investigator's scope is limited, that they are kind of restricted in a narrow sense to what the legislation says they can do. They report that this was done or it wasn't documented, but they feel like the scope is too narrow, and perhaps they could look at broadening what the investigators are able to recommend or require a home to implement. And also, there's not a lot of consequences on long-term care homes. A report comes out, it says something wasn't done that ought to have been. It doesn't always feel like it actually happens, and there are these long wait lists for a home. It doesn't seem like there's a penalty for getting it wrong.
Well, here's hoping that some good comes out of this inquiry. We appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.